Hi everyone. I didn't make this video right after the election because I was feeling pretty sick. I just had some minor sort of health problems flare up. Not because of the election specifically, but I suppose that didn't help. And the point of this video is not really about me, even though I'm a trans person, but about us together surviving the election and its after effects. And that's something I wanted to talk about. This isn't a video that is scripted in any way. It's just me talking about this off the cuff after I've had a chance to rest and gather my thoughts a little bit. And yesterday I wasn't doing so good for various reasons, but today I'm feeling better. So I thought if I was going to make something like this, it should be at a time like now when my thoughts are clear and relatively collected. I can be a bit scatterbrained and ramble, but if I seem sort of unfocused right now or all over the shop, you should have seen me yesterday. So all that out of the way, the point of this video again is queer solidarity and solidarity with all oppressed peoples under the yoke of fascism. And the gist essentially is that America is a system of power that looks after the elite. That's all that it does. That's all that establishment politics do. So as frightening as it can seem that the Democrats didn't win, it's also important to remember that regardless of who won, genocide would still be going on around the world in Palestine, Syria, and other places. But also, genocide at home would still be going on because the Democrats were essentially making no promises to combat the various human rights abuses that were being committed against different oppressed peoples. And this includes women, this includes queer people of all sorts, this includes racial minorities, religious minorities, Islamophobia, anything like that was constantly under attack. And we have to bear in mind that them going mask off through the election of Trump is just a reflection of what the Democrats were doing while wearing a friendly mask. They both serve the elite, they are the gatekeepers of power, and furthermore, the middle class, more often than not, are the gatekeepers of the politicians that I just mentioned. So people like Trump, people like Biden and Kamala Harris, and so many other elected officials are designed to keep power right where it is. And all of these illusions and talk of hope and falling into those kind of pitfalls and traps, these are old strategies. These are older than America, and they date back hundreds, if not thousands of years. The primary difference being in that older imperial systems weren't structured quite the same way. They owned slaves, for instance, but they didn't have the idea of whiteness, and systemic oppression through a racial hierarchy did not exist in the Roman period, for instance. That didn't really emerge until Christopher Columbus essentially pioneered the idea of settler colonialism and the project that would go on to be endorsed by other imperial powers, the Irish and the English in England in the 1600s and around the world through various colonies, the French, the Portuguese, Spanish, the English, and then eventually America. So these are all sort of old problems. America is a settler colony that upholds its power by disguising what it is. This is called American exceptionalism. The problem with that is that it's a police state. It's a settler colony, which effectively means that it's under military rule. The military rule is disguised through traitors, class, race, and or culture traitors, police, and elected officials more broadly, who are, again, gatekeepers of power. And they have an illusion, and that illusion is something that wax and wanes. It appears strong, and it weakens. And when it weakens, what we have are moments like right now, where the fascists are in a position of power. And fascism is capital in decay. When capital is in decay, it's weak, which means that it's susceptible to revolution. So those who previously were operating under a moderate or a white moderate centrist veneer let that slip away. And again, the only reason that people like Donald Trump exist is because capital needs them to exist, because in a position right now when empire is relatively weak, fascists are expected to come in and defend capital. And capital is the way that power is sort of structured materially and socially, again, in defense of the elite. So this is all a very sort of long-winded way of stating that what happened after the election was concluded and Kamala surrendered or ceded her position to Donald Trump, it's a Morton's fork, meaning the outcome is the same. It's the illusion of choice. And America is fascist either way. If you have Republicans who are fascist and you have Democrats who are just moderate Republicans, what you have is moderate fascism. America has always been fascist because moderates are just fascists waiting to happen. And any promises that they would make to queer people or other oppressed groups are things that they rescind under crisis. And crisis is just the slippage of power away from the elite, which they don't want. So I'm an anarcho-communist, for instance, and I believe that power shouldn't be arranged vertically at all in a pyramid, like that pyramid point at the top. That singularity is harmful, and the arrangement of power constantly moving up to the top through police violence, through a monopoly of violence, terror, and poetic expression, monopolized entirely by one side against the other, so the elite and their servants, state proponents, against everyone that they exploit and destroy, which includes queer people, but also a great number of other people who sadly voted for Donald Trump. If you look at, say, Nazi Germany, for instance, many of the victims of Hitler's regime were people that helped get him into power, and then he proceeded to kill and backstab them all, because they operate on a hierarchy of division, of supremacy for one specific group above all else. So it's effectively a radicalized form of capital, which adheres to the same principles, but it's not quite as domestically aggressive with them. Fascism is when imperialism comes home to empire. It's the imperial boomerang. And those policies that you see happening overseas in places like Palestine, Syria, the Congo, and just any other place in the global south, the Middle East, what have you, all of those policies will start to come home. And it's not, it is a cause for concern, absolutely, but it's also an opportunity for people to wake up. And this is a point of realizing consciousness towards class, but also race and oppression through culture, and as well. So class, race, and culture as something that is normally oppressed by the state to serve a heteronormative, settler colonial, and Cartesian model. And these are older sort of principles. The Cartesian model is you have thinking beings, which are white European cishet Christian men, essentially, or those under the Protestant ethic that it's secularized, but same idea. And then you have settler colonialism, which I've already explained, and heteronormativity, where the state is effectively straight, and any concessions that the state makes to its queer minorities under its control, it will rescind. And the idea Pete Buttigieg is just a faggot, for instance. Someone had said this on Tumblr, I think. I have it cited somewhere, but Pete Buttigieg is just a faggot. And during the AIDS crisis and the AIDS epidemic, they abandoned all queer people to die of the AIDS crisis through fascist neoliberal argumentation. And the same thing is going to happen. Not just AIDS is a continual sort of problem, but any kind of pandemic. And there was COVID, obviously. There's another sort of pandemic on the rise, apparently, that I just heard about, that the CDC kept under wraps until after the election. So anything like that, queer people as one particular minority will be blamed for. The AIDS disease was effectively known as the queer disease, specifically of homosexual men or male queer people more broadly, are often blamed for that one. It's no different than Jews poisoning the wells. In practice, it's just a way of dividing us and pitting us against each other. Same idea with COVID. In that one, Trump said Kung flu, for instance, but there were scapegoats at home as well. Jewish conspiracy, and I'm sure they blame queer people for that one too, though I don't specifically remember hearing that quite as much. But whatever happens in the future, the queer people are scapegoats, and we're scared. And there are people among us who are queer who probably voted for Trump, like the LGBA, the lesbian, gay, bisexual alliance, sort of and TERFs, who basically were older members of the queer generation who stabbed everyone else in the back. You have younger queer people who are scared. You have other minorities, black and brown people who voted for Trump instead of Kamala, sort of cutting their noses off to spite their own face, basically, because it's like, either way, it's bad. If Kamala won, it wouldn't have been good, and for a great number of people, it's still imperialism. They just took off the friendly mask. That's all that this is. And it's going to affect people at home more, because imperialism is coming home to empire. So people living in the imperial core, even though queer people are constantly attacked and disadvantaged, many trans people, non-binary people, gender non-conforming people more broadly are homeless. So it's like, outside of like Pete Buttigieg and elected queer representatives like that, who are basically feathers in the cap of the imperial crown, most queer people don't have that privilege. And outside of like queer normativity, like the middle class, where you have like home owning queer people, and appearing like, oh well, 2 parents, a couple of kids, a white picket fence, that kind of thing. Outside of that, most queer people don't have that kind of status, that kind of privilege, and they'll be treated like scum. If you're homeless, doesn't matter who you are. If you're white, straight, queer, a person of color, what have you, a religious minority, these are different axes of oppression that intersect, and it's something that is different degrees and flavors of shit. And oftentimes people like that, they are housing challenged or just outright homeless. They have to do survival sex work and other means of illegal labor to survive. They are targeted by the police, and they're targeted by vigilantes working for the state in some shape or form. And so in some sense, those people have always, this is just Tuesday for them, except it's even scarier. Like they've always been oppressed. They've always been targeted by the police and bigots. But now they're going mask off, which means that violence will accelerate. It will happen more broadly in public, openly, which means that we have to fight. But in order to do that, a very common message that I've seen and something that I wanted to say is you have to survive and spend time with people that you know won't harm you. This is a game of masks and mirrors, and you have to sort of know who you can be yourself around, while also at the same time we have to be able to, we're here and we're queer, and we need to find people not just within our own communities, just within the queer community, but intersectional solidarity. We have to know people of color. There are plenty of people of color who are queer. There are straight people that we can talk to, and just anyone who's not going to kill us. So it's not just, it's easier to turn just to our queer friends. Obviously, they need our support right now. Look out for each other. Make sure that just message each other. Let each other know that you care and that you have value, because suicide ideation is going to skyrocket right now. Suicide attempts are going to go up, and you need to look after yourselves, each other. And if you have friends in other positions who aren't oppressed the same way that you are, or to the same degree, reach out to them. People that aren't just going to take off a mask and reveal that they were Dio the whole time. And that's kind of what I wanted to say. Sorry, it took me a minute because I wanted to sort of set the table, and I'm also writing a book series right now that talks about anti-fascism and counteracting the effects of capital at home through queer expression. So a lot of the work that I do is through sex work and artwork and making political statements. And what I ended up doing is I'm going out to all of the people that I work with and just saying, like, look, from one queer person to another, I'm thinking about you, and I hope you're doing okay as far as things go, but also working with them, working on projects together to make ourselves heard. It's not just survive, which is very important, by the way, but also make sure that you're heard, because this is a time of testing. This is, in Gothic terms, a revelation. A revelation means to uncover. So an apocalypse, which is a form of revelation, is when the dead rise, and they rise and walk amongst the living, which means a state of exception where you have a feeling of us and then them, and the zombies are them or other, and this can represent different things. Zombies can represent fascism attacking minorities, but also minorities are going to be treated as cannon fodder. They're going to be treated as not alive, the rescinding of their rights within crisis, which the state will do all the time. Oftentimes it will push that domestically, but during an apocalypse, all of this comes home. So during the Imperial Boomerang, the zombies, who are always sort of present in the shadows, in the sewers, and just the dark recesses of the gutter, the opposite of home. They're outside of the home in darkness. Suddenly, those two things overlap, and you have people being seen as zombies, and suddenly queer people are more visible, and the state shines a light on us, and it says, they're a zombie. Kill them. It's a witch hunt. And oftentimes that is done by people who sell us out. And this can be straight people. This can be different minorities attacking one another, because to vote for Trump is ultimately to vote for a more aggressive form of fascism. And I've heard different people make arguments about ultimately this is perhaps, it's like tearing the Band-Aid off, just like pulling a Band-Aid off. And ultimately the argument that they make is it's better that this happen and that we come together and we fight, because we're going to have to do that anyways. And the whole point of moderacy is to pacify people. So if Kamala and Tim Vance, the vice president, I don't know his name, but if Kamala and the vice president had been elected, they primarily their job would be to whitewash the same exact things that are happening right now. And when they go mask off, and they're like, oh, sorry, even though they ran the worst campaign ever, for a variety of reasons that I don't really have time to go into here, nor do I wish to, they backed off, and now that the mask is off, the wolf is loose. And Malcolm X compared Republicans to wolves and Democrats to foxes. And with the wolf, they're more aggressive. They come at you from the front. They lack that ability to put on a mask and pretend to be your friend, whereas the fox is someone who they bare their fangs and they act like I'm your friend, but they're the one. Murderers come to you with smiles, Goodfellas, and that's the Democrats. Those are supposed to be the good guys, right? They're not good. They serve the elite. Oh, 1 second. Sorry about that. My phone went off. Yeah, the point being is that these are old problems. These are problems that have existed for as long as there have been social struggles against the state and workers. The state defends the rights of the elites, and workers defend each other. So it's states' rights versus worker rights, and you've probably heard that before, right? Where the state's like, oh, states' rights to own slaves, right? To treat people unequally in service to profit, and then workers often will sort of assimilate or cross over in service to state rights. In exchange for getting some rights themselves, they become cops. That's the middle class. And that was the case with like Howard Zinn's A People's History of America. But you see tokenization doing that same exact divide and conquer strategy with any group. So middle class is a form of assimilation, and they're expected to punch down, which incidentally is what Democrats also do. So anyway, so it's a question of states' rights versus worker rights, and they are in direct opposition with each other. And in times like this, when the mask is off and the wolf is loose, they'll come at you straight. And it's not whitewashed anymore, and it can seem terrifying, but it also gives you a chance because you've always been hunted. Would you rather be hunted by people who are pretending to be your friend, who will deliver equally fatal injuries onto you, killing you slowly, boiling you alive like a frog? Or would you rather have your enemies lack that kind of nuance and ability to deceive you and face these kinds of things head on? And honestly, I think it's important to recognize that struggle against the state is a universal sort of affair for all workers, for nature and the environment. We are stewards of the world that capital treats as something to cut up and destroy, to alienate us from, to alienize as an object that it fetishizes. And there are a lot of different ways that happens, but all of these divisions, all of these illusions that exist serve profit. And a lot of the pacifying ones have stripped away. And this is because of traitors working for the state who have gone mask off. This is just the mask off period of capital operating as it always does. So you need to survive, but you need to also be vocal. And this is difficult because on one hand, you want to hide. You want to not show yourself, but you also have to be vocal and say that we're being attacked, which means that you have to basically broadcast yourself from a position that isn't immediately vulnerable. And these are things to keep in mind. That's primarily what I wanted to say in this video, is stay alive and be smart about who you spend time with. Keep your friends close and your enemies far the fuck away from you. And don't keep quiet. This is the time to band together and fight against a common enemy, which is the state and its fascist lapdogs. And the police are not your friends. Establishment politicians are, by and large, not your friends. Your friends are each other. This goes for oppressed groups more broadly needing to intersect. So my message is sort of aimed moreover at queer people because that's the position of oppression that I occupy myself as a trans woman. But we also need to unite with other groups, people of color, religious minorities, feminists who aren't TERFs. TERFs are just fascist feminists, for instance. You don't want to go to a person of color and try and intersect with them through solidarity if they voted for Trump. A bigotry for one is a bigotry for all, so we need to set aside our bigotries and find similarity amid difference through a combined pedagogy of the oppressed under the shadow of state force. These are all hardly things that I've written about exclusively. They're what I specialize in. I specialize in anti-fascism and sexual liberation, the liberation of sex work through iconoclastic art, Gothic poetics. So that's sort of where I'm coming from with all of this. Intersectional solidarity is important, but know who's going to attack you and who's not. You know, you have to have each other's backs. You fight back to back against the enemy. Survive. Look after each other, and don't surrender. Don't give up. They want you to give up. They want you to lose hope. And when I talk about hope, I'm not talking about neoliberalism. I'm talking about hope in a future where we can band together and overcome our enemies through the greatest strength that we have, which is each other. The elite can only control us if they can divide us. Together, there's no way they can control us. A settler colony and all of these divided sort of states, they recruit from a concentric sort of gobstopper prison, and prisons within prisons, prisons adjacent to each other, which effectively is what states are, and they recruit from different populations to pit those populations against each other. So we need to unite. The queer people, first and foremost, as one of you, look after each other and reach out to allies that you can trust, and just know that this kind of thing has happened before and we've survived. This includes the AIDS crisis. This includes the burning of the Institute of Sexuality in Germany in 1933. It includes the outlawing of queer homosexuality specifically, which is queerness more broadly, really, in the Soviet Union the same year under Stalin. And in America, lavender panic in the 1950s and 60s, and then satanic panic after that. Queer panic takes a lot of different forms, and it dates back to the late 1700s in England when Matthew Lewis wrote The Monk, and queer people being persecuted around that time there. So this is nothing new, and it's something that we can survive, but we, as Ripley said in Alien, we have to stick together. It's the only way we'll survive. So it's kind of a heavy video, and it's not scripted. I look like shit, but whatever. Doesn't matter. And as far as all of that goes, I love you all. I'm going to keep writing and funding projects that I can to speak out against our oppression and to find value amongst us. And in their interim, just stay safe, and I love you all. And just stay vigilant. Until then, I don't know if I'll be doing any more videos for a while, but honestly, it's something that I would like to do more often, just to talk about different issues. It's difficult just because I'm writing books and illustrating them and organizing all of that, so I don't always have time to do videos like these, but I did want to do this one in particular. If there's a particular issue, a law, some type of event that I want to talk about, good or bad, I'll try and make the time to do something like this. I can't really produce anything beyond this production values. I'm just a trans woman in front of a camera with 5 o'clock shadow really bad, and that's the best I can do as far as that goes. But if you want more of what I can do, that I do better, which is writing books and illustrations and promoting sex work and doing sex work myself, my website's literally my name, so uh, I'll have that in the description if you're curious. I can't actually post the link, but maybe I can break the link and whatever. Um, but you can check out my work that way. So that's mostly what I'll be doing. But I did want to do this video just to be like, okay, I should say something because it would be foolish not to. And I love you all. You know who you are. Fascists, fuck off. You know who you are, and you're not going to win. Okay, because even if you kill us, even if you take away our rights, you're still fascists, and you're still doomed to die. Like you're not going to survive what you're doing to yourselves and to us. So just keep that in mind. All right, take care.